Welcome back to Kairos Conversations. Today we're going to be discussing irony in Mark's account of the Transfiguration. What was that Transfiguration? It's that moment when Jesus and three of his disciples went up on a mountain and he shined bright like a diamond, and somehow Moses and Elijah were also there. So we're going to be talking about that moment in Jesus' ministry and how Mark decides to use irony to communicate with his readers. So check it out. Welcome to Kairos Conversations. I'm Courtney Trotter, your Hebrew Bible enthusiast, and I'm joined today by Ryan Martin, our New Testament Greek guy. We teach biblical languages for a living, so if you're someone who's interested in biblical Greek or biblical Hebrew, or you want to study the Bible in the original languages, learn more about resources, then you have found the right place, because here we want to discover the world of the Bible through the original languages. All right, so Ryan, I already kind of leaned into the Transfiguration just a little bit and described it for our listeners, but there's a lot more going on in this story. And so I know in terms of just telling us what the Transfiguration is, what its significance, I know you probably have more details for us as we get into this story. So yeah, just summarize that Transfiguration for us and its significance.
Yeah, I like it. Jesus goes up on the mountain and shines bright like a diamond. That's um this was a significant moment in Jesus's earthly ministry, no doubt. And I think really important for us as readers of the Gospels is that we know that Mark's audience, Matthew's audience, Luke's audience is basically at the time the Gospels were written, people would have already known that this happened. As the gospel was being spread, as the good news of Jesus was going around the world, this is something that would have been told. So we get in the Gospels, and especially in Mark, a kind of weird telling of it. If this is the moment where kind of Jesus's glory shines forth, and the glory of the Son of God, uh, it's told in a very bizarre way, and not in the way that I think you would tell the story if you were just trying to say this awesome thing that happened to Jesus. There's something deeper, something subversive, something ironic that's going on. And if you know the text well, you probably already know some of the things that we're going here. But I just want you to think about that. Here's this moment where the veil is pulled back, and we see Jesus in a different way than his disciples saw him day to day. And how does Mark tell the story? That's what I want to go over with you guys today.
Yeah, this is one of those interesting stories where it kind of overlaps with your research in Mark and my research in Old Testament and Theophanes, or what we call Theophanes, where God appears before his people. And this one is really significant for a number of reasons, but mainly because we see Jesus shining, and then we hear the voice of God the Father saying, "This is my son, listen to him." And then we have also the glory cloud, which would have represented the Holy Spirit. Um, or every time in the Old Testament that that's referenced, the glory cloud is kind of a reference to the Holy Spirit. And so it's this interesting time where we see, all three members of the Trinity. But one way that I like to say it is like that moment when Moses would have been up on the mountain and they look up, the elders of Israel look up and they see God seated on a throne and through the sky. They look up and they see that in Exodus 24. And then Moses later on asked to see God's face because he saw his feet, but he didn't see his face. Well, now it's that moment where throughout church history, this is how they read it, that he's entering into that sacred time space. And so where God showed his back to Moses and the pre-incarnate Christ showed his back to Moses, now he has turned his face toward him. And so now Moses beholds Christ face to face, which was his question that he asked. And Elijah also asked that very same question to see God. And so now Elijah gets to see God. So both of those Old Testament figures ask the same question to be able to see God. So it's kind of an interesting, like you said, super climactic moment, super important. It's kind of a recapitulation, like a retelling and a re-entering into the moment at Sinai when God would have initially given the covenant to his people. And so you're like, man, this sounds exciting. This sounds exciting.
It's a big
But
deal.
yeah, there's some irony here, which means that there's subverted expectations, there's surprise. And in particular, this height of, Israelite history is kind of brought down with some like bummer moments, as you've like phrased it in our outline here today. So tell me about those bummer moments in Mark's retelling.
Here we are at this climactic moment in the history of Israel, in the life and ministry of Jesus, the Son of God. and Jesus and all his glory is there, and we get interrupted immediately. The beauty and glory of the face of God shining forth is, Rabbi, it's good that we're here. Let us make three tents, one for you, and one for Moses, one for Elijah. And then we get, speaking of dramatic irony here, the gospel writing itself tells us that Peter had no idea what he was talking about. He was afraid. He was just making stuff up. Now, you've probably heard this before, maybe used to this account, but I just want you to think like, why would you, like, of all the things that you could do here, like even if Peter did say this, which I believe he did, I think the gospel writers are faithful in communicating what happened. What a weird way to decide to tell the story. Especially since from then on the narrative just kind of ignores him, the voice of God comes. But why? Why do we get this? And in fact, the telling here is marked. We call this the historic present. It's says in Greek. You see said there in English, but it's really like, and Peter says to Jesus. It's like the story is calling your attention to what Peter says here. It's like, of all the things for your attention to be called to here, why would we call our attention to Peter's weird, awkward interjection?
Yeah, so like you said, super interesting. Like we have this kind of awe-inspiring like moment, and it's like the way that the story is written just takes you and makes you look directly down at Peter, like being a scaredy cat, basically. Is there another section of this? I think we have three bummer moments here that
We,
you
we
mentioned to
got
me.
three. We got two
Yeah,
more
three.
things that just kind of come across as bummers.
Mm-hmm.
It's so short. The moment is there and then it's gone. And the Greek is clunky here. I believe the other gospels clean it up a little bit, but it's like, and all at once, looking around, they didn't see no one, or no one, no one they saw, but Jesus alone with them. So it's like, how many different ways can we say he was all by himself all of a sudden? It's like, as quickly as this beautiful, glorious moment came to pass, it was gone. It was over. It's like, and there he is, Jesus by himself, alone on the mountain. Again, it's like the Greek, the flow of the narrative is directing your attention exactly where you wouldn't want to direct it if you were just trying to tell this in all of its glory of the way it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of times whenever if you come across some of those theophany moments in the Old Testament, like the story actually slows down and gives you more detail than you normally would have otherwise. But and like what you're saying is it kind of speeds up and directs your attention to where you shouldn't be looking, essentially. Yeah,
Yep,
that's kind of
exactly.
interesting.
All right, we got one more.
One more.
The beautiful climactic moment in the history of God's interaction with his people. And down the mountain, what are they talking about? Well, they're talking about death. Jesus tells them not to tell what they've seen until the Son of Man has risen from the dead. And you can't tell from the English, but in the Greek, eknekron, the from the dead there is fronted in front of the verb, in what we call the P2 position, the emphatic position. So you would almost read this in English until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. And it goes on here, the disciples were talking amongst themselves, trying to figure out what it meant to be raised from the dead. Right? The emphasis is on dead. We're down the mountain from this moment of glory talking about death, talking about suffering. And we go here into, Elijah came and they did as they did, and so will it be with the Son of Man. Right? It's like, what a buzzkill. Why would we be bringing this up here? Right? It's just not the way you would tell the story if you were just trying to call the audience's attention to the glory of the moment.
Yeah, so just a quick summary there. Like I said, we got this moment, and it's interrupted by Peter being scared. Then it's super short. Just as it begins, it ends. And then on the way down, Jesus is the one who's kind of bringing the bummer with being like talking about death. And so those are some of those ironic things that subvert your expectation when you expect this is going to be the new Sinai moment where God leads its people up out of Egypt and defeats, their enemies and leads them into the new kingdom. And there's some things there that kind of are the record scratch.
Record scratch is yeah, that's exactly what's going on.
So that makes me wonder, like, why is Mark, bumming us out? Like, why is he doing that?
why is he doing this? First of all, I hope this doesn't bother you too much. Because we have, I just in in Second Peter, as a way of kind of letting his readers know of his authority and his trustworthiness, he says like he received glory from God the Father, the voice that was borne to him by the majestic glory. This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. We ourselves heard this voice born from heaven as we were with him on the holy mountain. That's Second Peter. That's more of just a like baseline. That's what happened. That's the way probably that this event was told normally, right? So it's not like we're not saying here that the Transfiguration was a bummer. The Transfiguration was a beautiful, glorious moment in Jesus' earthly ministry, and I think the New Testament bears witness to that. But here in the Synoptics, and especially in Mark, we're getting a subversion of that. We're getting a kind of the bummer side of what happened because it fits what Mark is trying to do. What Mark is trying to do in this section, from the end of chapter 8 all the way through chapter 10, all the way to the triumphal entry, is show how the disciples are constantly missing the point about the fact that Jesus is going to suffer and die, about the fact that you pick up your cross and follow him, about the fact that those who will be first will be last, and those who are last will be first. This whole motif central to the book of Mark, that Jesus is a suffering Messiah and we're invited to follow him in that path, of course, towards resurrection glory, but that path goes through suffering and death. They're missing the point over and over again. What's happening here in the Transfiguration? The same thing. They're missing the point, right? Peter says, let's set up tents. This is it, right? Here it is. We're here at Sinai. Um, like this is it. It's over. Forgetting what it was that Jesus said must happen. And you, as the reader, I mean, if this bothers you a little bit, I mean, it bothered Peter too, didn't it? And if we gloss over this, and ignore kind of the subversion and awkwardness, we're kind of making the same mistake that Peter did in a certain way, skipping the suffering and death. Like one way that I see it put often in the Transfiguration is like it's a glimpse of who Jesus really is on the mountain. And by a certain definition, sure, like I understand that. But it's almost like Mark is kind of saying the opposite. Like when it's over and Jesus is back there alone with them, it's almost like Mark saying, no, like that's who he really is. At least at least in this path towards suffering and death, which is necessary for the Messiah to on his way to resurrection and glory, and that our path as we follow him is the same path.
Yeah, I think that's a really great word for us today, and shows us again how that irony can be used, how we can keep reading and looking for it ourselves. Because a lot of this, I mean, he showed us a few things in Greek that we couldn't have seen otherwise, like that P2 emphatic location and of from the dead and things like that. But most of it, we really, if we're just good, attentive English readers, we can find it for ourselves if we know what we're looking for. So that's kind of what we're helping you guys do today. Is just show you what you can find yourself if you know what you're looking for. So I hope you enjoyed that video today. Any final words, Ryan, before we go?
I mean, I want to keep talking about these ironic moments in Mark. This is like my new favorite thing. If you find some, tell us, in the comments, or reach out. We're always easy to find on our website, and always teaching Greek and Hebrew. So come and tell us what you find ironic in Mark, and sign up for a Greek class.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we'd love to see you in class sometime. And if not, just in the comments, let us know what you're seeing, what you're reading, and what you find interesting. But until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.